Do you ever hear something and you're like, man, I don't really know if that's right, but it definitely sounds right. Because I heard, well, I was studying the bra science, I guess whatever the bra experiment, you know what I mean, bro science. And there was one of the guys like, oh, there was a study that says that guys are happiest when they hang out at least twice a week with groups of friends that are less than 5 people or 5 people or less. And I was like, at first I was like, all right, that's bunk. But then I was like sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know if this is real. And there really wasn't enough information for me to like look up and find an article. But I was like sitting there thinking about that. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, huh. I know, it kind of makes sense. Because it's like, that's like the ideal amount of you seeing a friend or seeing somebody and then all like them staying fresh in your head pretty much outside of work, and the blend of being a smaller group like that is like, oh well, when you hang out and there's like 5 of you or 4 of you or even 3 of you, you get like a lot of like what feels like one-on-one. Whereas if you got like a group of like 20 guys that meet up every Friday, it's like, oh, a lot of guys here. And it's definitely something that is like, oh wow, it kind of makes sense. I know that it seems like to me one of the things is that I have found that like the one vehicle trips are like the ideal group size for a lot of stuff. And like a one vehicle trip is, you know what? Me and the guys are hanging out and there's 4 of us, so we can all take, Todd's car, or we can all hop in Jimmy's truck or something. And with stuff like that, it's like one car trips. That's like really where a lot of the bonding is. Even in the trips where it's like multiple vehicles, the bonding really happens within like the vehicle group I found. And that's something that's like, there's not like a hard science on it, but it's like, well, it just feels right. And I know like it's one of those things where it's like, there's like a gray area too on the other side, because there's like sometimes like if you ever go to a party with like 100 people or something like really big, you feel private if you've come with somebody or come with a group of people, because it's like everybody's here and we all kind of belong here, but we can all like chill out together here, and or like split up, and then on the way back home it's like, swap stories and like have a secondary bonding experience with like, oh yeah, you were at uh I'm trying to remember what the Great Gatsby's name was, but you're at one of the Gatsby parties. Jay Gatsby, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's like, oh yeah, you're at one of Gatsby's parties, and it's like, oh yeah, that was like, a good time, and it was so intimate because we were alone. It's like, all right, obviously that's kind of like what they said in the book, because it's like, oh, I think it was Nick Carraway was like, oh yeah, we've got this I'm trying to remember, I guess it was a character said it to Nick Carraway. I'm trying to remember what the girl's name was. But it's like, oh, the nice thing about big parties is you can be so intimate. It's like kind of true, because everybody's in their own little like vibe. They're like, oh yeah, let's be vibing here. I don't know, it's definitely something that's kind of cool or fun, where you're like, oh yeah, you know, um I don't know, it's like it's kind of like an anonymous, but it's also another thing too, because I've also never really felt quite so alone than like when there's a large group of people and you don't know who to talk to. And like it kind of almost feels more isolating than if you're just doing something by yourself. Because if you're doing something by yourself, your plan was to be alone. Whereas like if you go out and or say you go over to like your friend's house or something and you feel like everybody's ignoring you, I don't think that they maybe like they're not intentionally doing it, but it's like everybody's kind of got their like clicked off. It's like you kind of feel more lonely than if you were just by yourself doing anything else. And I don't know, it's something where it's like, all right, I guess that's why like a small group makes sense. I know, yeah, I try not to bring in friends' girlfriends this too many times, but I know one of the things is I often hear somebody say, oh, when so and so got a significant other or they got a wife or whatever, husband, although they no longer hung out with the rest of the group. And it's like part of that is like, how are you guys going out? And I knew that personally because there was like, we used to kind of split up by car when, all right, we got like several guys going out. We all kind of know each other. We're splitting up by car. Maybe it's a mixed gender group. And the thing is that when people start splitting up into girlfriend, boyfriend, or boyfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend, whatnot, I don't know what they call them these days with the youth, but they friend. One of the things is like, when you got people pairing up like that, it splits the cars. So like you end up where you've got well, I know for example, one guy, he had a 5-seater car. We used to always go and do stuff. Then it's like, oh, I got my girl's got to come with me, and it's like, of course, I used to be his passenger princess, but then I became, car number two, and it's like, wow, it kind of feels a little bit I don't know, it feels a little bit like you cut me out here. But then it's like, car number two, we're like, all right, well, we'll do whatever. And then, next thing you know, car number two, we no longer hang out. And it's like, well, what happened? It's like you kept on putting me in car number two, and then car number two activity started going like a little bit different because it's like, all right, when you had 5 people or 6 people or even like 7 people with a van, it's like everybody gets in the same vehicle. But it's like once you start adding, SOs and everything, it's like, oh, well, now we're going to split this group differently. And splitting the groups differently doesn't it doesn't make me feel good, but it's like I have to ask myself a lot why. Like, why are you doing that? And I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit frustrated, maybe I'm a little bit flustered, but it's like there's a lot of things where it's like you want to tell somebody, but it's like how directly can you tell somebody that like the reason we hang out is because every time you want to do something, you tell me to get into car number two, and it's like all the bonding that we had was car number one activities, And it's like now car number two is car number one because we're doing our own thing. And it's like, I don't know, it's a weird thing is like you want to tell somebody that directly, and you do. I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit more blunt with it when I said it the first several times, but it's like, at a certain point you just stop, you give up on telling somebody, you give up on saying, hey, you want to do stuff because it's like, this is more bro science, but it's like if somebody says, hey, you want to go to a party, you want to go to a rave, you want to go to a concert, you want to go to you want to go fishing down by the creek, you want to go down, we do a midnight fast food run, you want to do something at like, the 3 a.m. gas station run. It's like, if you say no a certain number of times, they're just going to stop asking you. And for some people that might be once, but it's like, it feels, in my experience, it feels like for most people, it's like 3 to 5, maybe even 7 times you can get away with saying no to something. But I've also had some people where it's like they invite you once and it's like you get the first one and it's like, you know what? I'm sitting there and it's like, as I'm like thinking about it, it's like grayness of how you know somebody, Like if I know you kind of, you're on the fringe, you're like, you hang out, we hang out, maybe you're with like the friend group with another friend every now and then. I invite you to one thing and you don't come, or you say, oh, not really interested. There just might not be the opportunity for it to come up again. And, dynamics change over time. So it's like, you know what, maybe 2 or 3 months later, maybe the person that you were, was your tag along, or you were the +1 for, is is no longer in good standing with the rest of the friends, and for whatever reason they no longer hang out, and so it's like that was your opportunity to break up that dynamic where you're no longer the +1, now you're your own individual, and they might take that second risk on you to say, hey, you know what? Let's try inviting you to another party, see how that goes. I don't know. It's weird because it's all bro science and like stuff that it's hard to measure, but it's not impossible in the sense that, like, if I told you, you know, somebody's only going to let you say no to them so many times before they stop even asking, it's like makes sense, you know what I mean? And because it makes sense, you're like, oh yeah, I get it, but it's like hammering down that number is like, all right, might not be a measurable number. Might not even be a number at all. It might just be a vibe, but you can't really read the vibes right. I know that it's kind of weird too, because it's like, how do you well, there's so many soft cues, I guess, with people, because there's a lot of people where it's like, you know, somebody might run with you doing something, but they're not really, like, you know, sometimes, you know, somebody runs with you partying, but they're not really drinking or anything, and they're not smoking anything, you know, they're just staying sober, but they're still kind of coming along for the vibes, you know. And some people get away with it, and you don't really notice because they're just like vibing so well. And then some people, completely different person when they're sober, and they just don't vibe at all. And you know, obviously sobriety is something that it's preferable probably that everybody's sober, but I don't know, there's some people that change so much. And I know this because it's like one of the things that I was like looking at is Chris Farley was talking about sobriety. This is like another bro science thing where it's like, I don't know that I can really find the information if I was asked to again, but I remember hearing something about Chris Farley. It may have been a secondary interview talking about him, and they said one of the things is with drugs and Chris Farley is that he felt like he wasn't the likable, lovable guy when he wasn't using anything. And it's like one of the things that kind of made him like want to go overboard on, you know, partying hard all the time. And I know that from my personal experience, there's some people that just, you know, different times they're like, you know, they don't realize that I'm buzzed or something, and they're like, man, I like you better tonight. And I'm like, oh. Then you realize that it's like every time they tell you that like they like you, you're always buzzed, and you're like, oh, that's, I don't know, maybe you don't like me sober. And I don't know, I try to take the correct path. I try to say, you know what, don't chase a buzz just because people say they like you better when you're buzzed, even if they don't know you're buzzed. But it's like I see now that well, you know, if I was in Chris Farley's shoes, I don't know, because it's like, you know, the thing is his personality was his moneymaker. For me, my my likable, lovable charm isn't exactly what brings me the money, so it's not a factor for me. You know, I don't really have to worry about being the most loved guy because of whatever. And so I wonder, you know, if I don't know, I guess I wonder if I was in somebody else's shoes, how I'd feel. And ultimately the answer to that question is I mean, obviously the like professional answer is I don't know, but like the true answer is like I don't know that if I was in their shoes, I would be able to see any perspective differently to make decisions they have not already made. You know what I mean? And I think about that because like there's a lot of times where I've had somebody giving me advice, and for whatever reason they're trying to give me advice, and it comes from a good place, but I know what they're trying to tell me to do won't work, or what they're trying to do doesn't make sense for what I'm looking at, and I'll be like, oh, it doesn't work. And then it's like, you know what, for whatever reason they get a shift of perspective and they realize that I wasn't being difficult, I was actually right. It's just what they were trying to tell me was either outdated or did not apply to what I had in front of me. You know, because I know for well, there was like a more modern vehicle that I had, and I was working on it, and I was having some trouble getting it to run, and I was trying to figure out what it was, and I was like, it's a whatever, and I was asked, you check the carburetor, and it's like it's a fuel injected car, and there is no carburetor. It's port injection, so it's not even like some of the original carburetor. Well, when you went from carburetor to the throttle body fuel injection, sometimes I have heard throttle body fuel injection referred to as a electronic carburetor. That being said, I've also seen a thing called is also called an electronic carburetor, ironically enough, that was a like carburetor that was running a I think it was like a servo or something in the actual carburetor to adjust pressure, which was kind of it was kind of weird. It was like one of those like things where you see somebody do something and it was like strictly a racing application. But for me it's like there's so many things where I'm like looking at them and I'm saying to myself, "Oh my, what is that?" And you just realize like, "Oh, well, you've got this thing going on, you got that thing going on." It's like, are you looking at something that exists or doesn't exist? Are you looking at the exception to the rule, or the whatever, the perfect example of the rule, And a lot of times I've found that if somebody's asking for advice, they're not all the time, but like it seems like 50-50, I'll call it. All right, more bro science for you. Is it's like 50-50 for whether or not they've got the exception or whether they've got the rule. And so that's why it's like a lot of times if somebody's asking, I'm not really giving them advice in a sense. Because it's like I can't, unless, I was told by a professor once, and it always made sense. Unless you've got eyes on something, don't ever give advice over the phone. And that's kind of true, I've found, for a lot of things. There's a lot of things where it's like, oh, the reason why your advice isn't working is because somebody's terrible at describing something to you. Or they're leaving out details that would be very obvious upon a visual inspection, you know? And I don't know, speaking of, well, I guess I'll just go on a tangent on bro science today, because, another thing that's like bro sciencey is like, how do you define a friend? And, I've heard a lot of different definitions over the years, but another one that I've heard from, one of the college professors is, I don't consider somebody my friend unless they've got a key to my house. If you don't have a key to my house, you're not really in that circle that I call a friend. And at the time, it seemed like really, it seemed really out there. But as time's gone on, you're like looking at it, and what do you say? Oh, wait a second. That does kind of make sense, because it's like, it kind of makes sense, but I don't know that I 100% agree with it, but I know precisely what he's saying. It's like, if you don't trust somebody to come into your home without you there, or have access to your home and not abuse it, do you trust them enough to call them a friend for other things, And in that description, it makes a lot of sense. And like the sense of like, I don't consider you, like, there's obviously, I guess, that like pickup part, but I guess like the other thing too is like with a lot of the old men in my life, they seem to always say, as you get older, the importance of friends kind of goes down. I'm not sure how true that is, because I guess I'm not like I'm not quite a retiree yet, but one of the things that I realize is that for a lot of these guys, pretty much they've got their friends picked, and they know what they like and what they don't like. And for guys in their 50s, 60s, 70s, what's really the point in trying to find new friends your age? There may be some benefit to it, but I think for a lot of them, it just doesn't really, making friends for the sake of friends doesn't make sense, because like when you're younger, the whole benefit of making friends is they're like, extension of like what you'd consider family, I guess. They're like what you do things with. They're like the people that you age with. They're like part of your cohort or whatever in time, you know? And all this comes together and they go on. And so that's like the bonding between men or the bonding between humans, I guess, where it's like, all right, you've got all this friendship happening at the start. And that's like, as you get a little bit older, it's like some of the things about friends kind of change because for a lot of these older guys, it's like, you know, they got pretty big families. And it's like, you know what, if I had, you know, you start out by yourself pretty much, you know, if you're, you know, a young man on his trajectory of the world, you start out on your own. You go out there, you say, all right, I'm kind of by myself. Maybe I get like some kind of friends that come along with me. But, you know, the transition from high school to college, you lose a lot of people. And the transition from college to the rest of your life, you lose a lot of people. Because there's a lot of people that are in your life pretty much just because they, you're all going on the same path or you're all walking the same direction. And I've heard different points of views from the elder gentlemen on this topic, but a lot of them kind of say something along the lines of, oh, you know, if everybody's horses go in the same direction, you're not really friends, you're just kind of acquaintances. But one of the things is, like, I guess you could kind of make friends with that, but it's also like, I think it's foolish not to at least be friendly with those you're around, you know, because it's like, all right, you don't really know how long somebody's going to be in your life for. You know, you might see this guy in class today and you might be in your life in 10 years, you know, talking about how he remembers when you were getting married or something. And so, you know, I guess that's like a different thing. So it's like you don't really know which one of the guys you're going to do stuff with. But the other thing too is it's like your network pretty much. So like your network of friends and family, it's like when you start off, it's pretty much just your family. As you go along, you know, or my bad. Well, I guess it's kind of true. Like when you're born, yeah, you know what, all you got is family. Then you start making friends. Then you get into that like post college point of your life, and you're like, what do? You're like, oh man, I'm post college. I don't really feel like I have any friends that are relevant to what I'm doing, you know, because everybody's kind of split off on their own thing, you know? And the fact that everybody's split off on their own thing isn't really the end of the world, but it's like, what's happening here, you know? Because as I don't know, there's like a loneliness, I guess I've experienced with a lot of my friends where it's like that thing where it's like no longer do you have that cohesion holding you together, and it feels weird because it's like, you know, suddenly you're no longer in the same cities, and now it's like, all right, you've got dude, and one of the things that like classes and scheduling, like school programming and stuff, like maybe you do like after school activity of some sort. One thing they really help you with is like planning times to meet, because it's like, oh yeah, you know what, we've got whatever happening or we've got whatever school events happening. So it's like you go to all the games or whatever, you meet the people that go to all the games, and then you kind of like, even if you're not really planning it, you kind of end up together a lot. And trying to replicate that in other areas of your life is um like how do you plan for meetups, you know, when everybody's working, everybody's got schedules, and everybody says, hey, I'm busy doing this or I'm busy doing that, or oh, you know, I've got to take my kids to practice, I got to take you know, whatever, you know, I got to worry about the old in-laws, you know, got to worry about you know, whatever. There's always a an excuse or something, if you will, not to hang out. And it's, I guess, finding the reasons to do stuff. And it's like, all right, you know, and one of the things is like sometimes scheduling helps, but it's like, from my experience, I used to say, oh, you know what, if I can schedule it, I can do it. And I was naive, but it did work for a while. And then one day that mentality caught up to me because I realized just because I can schedule it and I can say, oh, I'm staying on schedule, doesn't mean that I can keep schedule of those around me. And I can't do things, but I also can't read somebody's schedule if they're not like actively sharing it with you. I can't say, hey, whatever. I can only verbally talk to you about something at best, or even on like writing or something. I just know that there was one thing that kind of burned me because I was like planning something with a friend. It's like, all right, let's do a out of town trip or whatever. 5 months in advance. It's like, all right, we got scheduling going on. Then what happens? Bam. You know, within 5 months of planning, and then within 5 days of departure, what happens is it pulls out, and you're like, oh wow, now all the plans for two are a plan for one. And it's hard to explain to somebody. Well, very few people in my life have understood this sentiment for me, but it's like when I planned for being with you, every time I like, and you pull out on me, every time I experience something, I look to where you should be, and I'm like, man, I really wish that Steve was with me, or Widget Will or something. And it's like, I don't know, it's like the whole trip, then like the whole sentiment's just dragging me down, because it's like every time I did something, I'd be like, oh man, and then it's like you want to share, but it's like, how do you share something with somebody that wasn't there or didn't care enough to, you know, tell you until the last moment? It's like, oh, well, what do you do? And, the advice that I got from like the three people that I entrusted with that knowledge all said, stop hanging out. And all those people varied in age from about 20 years older than me to about 50 years older than me. So it was like a gradient. And, there's one person I asked that was about maybe a decade older than me. And they all kind of said stuff along the lines like, just, you can't trust a friend like that. And I guess it took me a while to even, well, I don't want to accept that as true. But what ends up happening is that throughout my own experiences, it's like I guess I got proven that I was wrong and right at the same time. I got proven that if somebody isn't like willing to at least notify you within enough time to change plans, it's like, okay, because it's like, 5 days, it's like, man, I'm pretty committed. And, like a month out, I'm not as committed. Um, I'm still kind of committed, but I can at least sit down and look at what I'm doing and say, does this make sense? Now, in this particular situation, I say 5 days, but it's mostly just because it sounds good next to 5 months. I had the car packed, and that was when I was told, because I was like, all right, I got the car packed. I took this particular vehicle because I was going with a friend. I was going to do a motorcycle trip if I was solo, but I was like, all right, I'll take the car, because it's it's a nice sedan. So
Fully charged battery, fully charged. Unplug charger.
It's a nice sedan, so I was like, all right, let me enjoy we can enjoy the ride down together. We don't have to be on a motorbike, and we can do our like itinerary. And Well, I felt that I could do it. And I said to myself, all right, let's do this. Let's roll. Let's get our mumbo jumbo going. And I like went down, but it's like, the whole time it's like, everything that I wanted to do that would have been motorcycle related, I was like, the guy pulled out technically, the technicality of like 2 days or 1 day notice, because I had the car packed and it was like, do you want to leave? We can leave tonight or we can leave tomorrow night. Because he had like, originally I wanted to like head down on a Tuesday, but then he said, oh, maybe you should like push it back to a Wednesday when we go out. And I was like, all right, fair enough. But I'll ask you again just to like say, hey, because he, well, over 5 months stuff happens, and the situation is that he told me that he had some more time freed up, or that more time could have been freed up for him. But it's like, all right, fine. And then it's like slap to the face because no longer is he coming with me. And then I'm like, all right, I'm doing this thing. And it's like the whole time I'm with this car, I'm like, man, all the stuff I wanted to do with the bike, I can't do. And I don't know. It's like I'm stuck with this car. So it's like I'm thinking about it the whole time. But then it's like, I was like kind of in like first day on the trip or whatever. It's like second day in maybe. It's like I call him and it's like he's hanging out with all my all our friends or whatever, because he's like, oh, well, it's my girlfriend's birthday or whatever, we're all doing this stuff. And I was like, you're telling me that you pulled out? Because like in the interim of this thing, he pulled out because he said that it was like, I won't go into what he said at this moment, but he at the time he was like, well, he said to me, he said, oh, like, so we've been planning this for 5 months. We've had the date written down. He said, oh, I didn't realize that was this week, And it kind of like pissed me off because like, motherfucker, we planned this shit for 5 months. The fuck you mean you didn't know it was this week? Then it's like, you know what? You got your girlfriend that wasn't your girlfriend until about 2 months ago. And to me, it felt like, all right, motherfucker, you done fucking ditched me for your girlfriend's birthday. And I don't know, it just, yeah, it pissed me the fuck off. It did piss me the fuck off. But it's like, it's kind of frustrating too, because it's like, all right, now you're hanging out with all, like, bruh, you could have at least dealt me in. Sorry, I had to take a break there. I was getting on a little bit of a tangent, but you could have like dealt me in, and you could have said, oh, you know what? We had plans for you to be along, and that's proof that I'm not ditching you just because it's my girlfriend's birthday. We had we planned for you to be out, for this surprise party this weekend, and be nice if you were there. And I don't know, it would have at least, I probably, it's hard to say what I would have done, but it would at least have made me feel that I wasn't ditched for a girlfriend. I wasn't I don't want to say like emotionally cheated on, but it's like, you kind of feel like you're cheated on when like, one of your closest bros is out there, your bro, he's like, all right, this is the guy you do everything with. It's like, all right, I hang out with you 5 days a week, pretty much, and we're out all the time. It's like, and then you get a girlfriend, and I appreciate the fact that I cannot 100% replicate the girlfriend experience. However, you don't need to cut me out of your life entirely. It's like, it'd be nice if it was like a ramp down. It's like, oh, hey, whatever. Let me down easy is what I'm trying to say. Don't break my heart hard. Don't crack it over a rock. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's just bruh science for you. I keep saying bruh, but bro is what I'm trying to say. But my brain ain't wired like that. And I know there's a lot of stuff going on with like, what do you do with a well, I shouldn't say what do you do. What do you think, I guess, when you've got a girl or you got a guy, you got somebody that you want to like replace your best friend with. It's like, I don't know. That's what it feels like. But I guess some of that stuff, like there's a lot of things where it's like I could understand things if they were explained to me in a way that was better than what you did. Is what I want to say to a lot of guys around me, because there's a lot of guys where it's like being told F you is like much better for me than like and it's not better, but it's like if somebody says a hard F you, I can tell it's kind of like a joke. They're like, you know, it's a little bit of like a thing, but it's like a soft F you that's kind of more like personalized. And I feel like that's the one that that's the one that I'm like feeling in my heart when things are done, you know. It's like when well, you know, there's like, you know, it's like if you've got a friend, right? And you know, you kind of have like a thing where, you know, you don't really know when it started, but it's like kind of like, you know, for the past 4 or 5 years that you know him, every year on his birthday you do, you know, birthday shot. And you date a girl within his friend group. And you know, like kind of like you're all like friends or whatever. And then you know, because you kind of did like this birthday shot thing, you know, you and this girl break up, it's ahead of your friend's birthday. And you show up to your friend's house to do a birthday shot. And you know, all your friends are there because they did a party. And because like everybody was kind of friends with both of you, they picked your girlfriend or your ex-girlfriend over you. And you know, it feels like personal in a different level. And you're like, you know, we're adults, man. You could have just invited both me and my ex-girlfriend. You could have invited neither one of us, but by actively picking one of us, you chose sides. And by choosing sides, you're no longer in. And it's like you're no longer in the thing, and it feels emotional too, because it's like you pick, like I thought we were friends, but then you reminded me that what I thought were the level of friendship I thought we had was not there, and it feels like everything was a lie. And then it's like, how do I feel about that? I don't know. Besides heartbroken, or you know, I don't know, solitary, lonely on a night where everybody's partying. It's really hard to say. I know that, you know, it's one of those things that it really cooks my goose, I guess. And I don't know. There's a lot of stuff where it's like I kind of want to say, because like, well, I guess we're gonna get back into the bruh science thing, Eric, right? Because I'm gonna focus on this today. But you know, another like bro sciencey thing is like you know, if you and your friend like a girl, what do you do? You know, and obviously, third party thing. You know, she's a woman, which means she's a person, and she can make her own decisions. So there's not 100% like, you know, in your hands there. But it's like, you know, if you both like a girl or whatever, right? And you're coming into like a new thing, right? And what I mean by that is like either you're both coming into a new group, or you're both get introduced to her at like the same time. It's like, which one of you is going to lock in on that? You know, which one of you is going to get the chance of the first rejection, if I will. And that's something that it's like, all right, I've got a pretty good idea that I would like to I would like to be the guy, but it's like, part of me is like, all right, I get reality. But it's like, there's been times where it's like, one of your well, it's like your guy you hang out with, favorite one of them, the group is like talks you out of it, and then it's like you find out later that he wasn't talking you out of it for your own health. He was talking you out of it so you could get a shot first. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, let's come up with here like, oh, Melissa's new. Hey, you want to go talk to her or whatever? And it's like, oh, you know, um, he hits you with something and he makes you like, I don't know, second guess yourself just long enough for him to get that like shot through. And it's like, um, even though it may not have worked, it's not about whether or not it did or did not work. It's about that mentality of like, he just tried to cut my brakes on a downhill race. So I would crash out and you'd have a chance to finish because you knew you couldn't beat me on speed alone, is what I'm trying to say. And that like mentality is the part that drags everything down. The well, it drags down the joy, the revelry. It drags down like the goodwill, I guess is what I'd call it. It's that like that trust is betrayed. And when trust is betrayed, it's hard to forgive somebody, but I know there's a lot of times where people ask for forgiveness in my life, and what does forgiveness look like? Forgiveness for some of us, you know, is not for me. Forgiveness isn't really saying I'm sorry or saying verbally. I'd say forgiveness isn't like a verbal granting. It's not a letter in a sense. It's not that like, oh, I forgive you for I forgive you for telling Tracy that I'm not into women when we first met. So that way, she wouldn't even consider asking me anything because she was into me when we first met. You know what I mean? It's not saying, oh yeah, I'm okay with that. It's more so saying I won't do that back to you. That's kind of like my definition of forgiveness. I'm not going to check you on something. It's like that's like that's the forgiveness. It's not like, oh yeah, and you got me good on that one, but whatever. And so one of the things is with that is like it's also like I'm trying to like think about checking and like what does it mean to check somebody like that? It's like, all right, I'm not going to hurt you the way you hurt me. But if you hurt me the way that you hurt me again, we're no longer chill like that. You know what I mean? So it's like if do that twice, it's like, guess what, bro? You got a reputation and you're no longer my bro. And I'm now demoting you to a different thing. We're just gonna be I'm gonna use your name, it might even be your nickname, but I'm not no longer being like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna intentionally hang out with you. There's like the steps, I guess, that I take. I know that friend group dynamics and like what do guys do with each other? That's like a mystery that many ask, but very few will ever get a proper answer for. And that's okay. Not everybody needs a proper answer. Just certain people need to find their answers. But it's definitely one of those things that it hurts. It hurts in a sense where you're like, man, I don't trust you. But it's like, some of the things too. I say it hurts, but I don't know exactly what hurt means sometimes because it's like sometimes somebody will be like, "Oh man, you still hurt over that." And it's like, I don't know that I would describe hurt because I'm not emotional about it. You know, I'm not gonna call anybody and complain. I'm not gonna be like, "Oh man, can you believe what Bobby Sue did," or anything. It'll be like, "Oh yeah, well, uh, I'm not gonna call anybody and complain about it, but I'm not going to let you do what you did to me the first time again. I'm not gonna let you do a try to oopsie your way out of that. You know, I don't know. That's like one of the things. The reason why this is like a bro science is forgiveness, is because like how can you It's hard to put forgiving somebody into a categorization where it's like, hey, somebody did something warranting forgiveness. Here's a checklist. You know, it's kind of like, all right, well, do I think they're going to do it again? Was it a one-off thing, or is this who they are? This is the first time I saw who they are, you know? Because there's some people that like you know, you don't really realize that you didn't see who they were until they do something that's kind of messed up, and you look back and you realize that they were posturing up for you to appear as something they were not, just to I don't want to say just to get close to you, but like just to appease or not be called out in a way. It's definitely something that it's like I don't know, it does hurt emotionally, but you know, calling somebody out over, you know, wonky science is kind of funny. But it's mostly funny just in the sense of like what's the like there's very few ways that you can tell somebody over the internet, or you can write a list out and say, all right, here's what's worthy of forgiveness. Here's what, if somebody does this to you, call them out. You know, it's hard for me to say, oh, you know what, if somebody does it, because the thing is there's so many situations where the the hardware that everybody's operating on may be the same, but the software, you know, is how they're interacting is different, and you're running a different set of software than they are. And while everything else might be similar because your hardware looks the same, your software not the same. And because of that, there's unique challenges and trials that you're trying to I guess learn in real time. That's one of the things that I know with a lot of the advice that was given to me coming up. There's like a lot of things that are dated, or they're not they're so application specific that a more general rule would have helped me a little bit more, because it's like, you know, maybe a less general rule, but I know like one of the things is like how do you know when somebody um crossed a line? And the answer really is it depends on the cultural norms of the society that you are living in at the time of the transgression, or whatever the action was. Because sometimes it's a transgression, but sometimes, you know what? It's just the way things were and how it was happening around you, you know? It's like if shaking hands with somebody ever becomes an insult, all the times that I shook hands with somebody was never an insult. It was always, hey, you know, this is my way of saying hello, introductionary thing. But if that becomes an insult, all those times that I did it does not become an insult. They are what they are. They were always handshakes. It's just that what's considered acceptable has changed, and shaking hands with somebody is no longer it, you know? I don't know, there's a lot of stuff going on. I know I gotta stop using so much. That's what I gotta stop doing. It's starting to annoy me. The I know there's a lot of stuff though too with just like friends and stuff. Because I know one of the things is there's a lot of people that'll send like an annual, normally like a Christmas, but maybe like a holiday card. Because some people send one in like the spring or something, where it'll be like spring has sprung. Here's what's going on. And that's kind of like a way older people keep in touch. That I'm not sure how the youth of tomorrow are going to handle that. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that the concept of a holiday card or a greeting card or some like annual update card is going to like be around, but I don't know if that's going to be something that kind of becomes a less popular, or whether the age group that's currently coming up just hasn't gotten there, like whether it's like, people with families don't get to see their friends as much, so they tend to have a record of everybody that they keep and then send them something once a year just to maintain friendships. Is that something that people with families do because they can't, like, ring a friend up and say, hey, I'll be over in 5 minutes, or I'll be over whatever at I'll be over at the coffee house, come and meet me there. There's going to be some terrible poetry tonight. If you want to pop in anytime, I'll be there till 7. you know um I guess maybe for some people like 9:30, but you know what I mean? Like there's like a time where it's like kind of a loose thing. It's like, hey, you want to meet up? I know, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of fun, but just because something's fun to do with somebody doesn't mean that it's going to be fun to do with them in 20 years. Some people change a little bit, but there's a lot of people that, like, I don't know, they're pretty chill, and then it's like it turns out that you're not really catching them when the earth's chill or something changes. And they no longer have that vibe with them that they once did. I knew growing up, one of the things that I'd often hear too is like, you got to change your friends. And it's like, sometimes you got friends that are bad influence, but sometimes you got friends that are like, they're not necessarily a bad influence on you, but they're just no longer relevant to what you're doing. And it's not that you have to let them go. It's that, like, you're hindering yourself to try to hold on to something that isn't there. And that's the question. It's like, how many of your friends would be better off if you hung out with them less? And the answer may be not all of them, but a few. And what that looks like is, yeah, we've got a few friends that we don't hang out with anymore. We don't hang out with them because whatever. I just know, like, one of the things that I'll see this on Instagram a lot. You got somebody on Instagram. What does it look like? Oh, yeah, that's a guy I used to know or I grew up with doing different things. And it's like, oh man, it's kind of nice to see that he's, doing whatever. Maybe he's got a kid. Maybe he's out with a friend, or maybe he's out doing just something so out there that you're like, wow, I'm really glad that he did whatever he was gonna do. I know there's a couple people that I know from like high school that, like, they really broke that mold and became quite successful at what they did, in a sense where you can clearly see it and you're like, wow, I'm like really proud of you, but I don't think you would have gotten to where you are today if we hung out now as much as we used to. And I have seen on Instagram too where there was, just every now and then, here's what I was like thinking of too, is like, I'll come across a story and it'll be like somebody talking about how, sacrifices they had to make to become who they are. And they're like, oh, when all my friends were partying, I was out there, building business. And it's like, you know what? I knew that a lot of people are like, oh, that's like an anti-party post. But I guess, like, you can do both, but also for a lot of people, they can't. They can only really do one. And I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I know like for some people it's like, that, at the time that you're partying is somebody else's time to grind. Your time for, going to bed might be somebody else's wake up. When you're saying, oh man, I think I'm gonna wind down for the evening, somebody says, all right, I'm waking up for night shift. And so it's kind of hard to say what's going on. I know for some people that shift in when they're working has really been quite like the game changer for them. There's a couple people that I know that went from day shift to night shift, and it's not really the night shift like pay differential that really does it for them. It's the I know one person in particular, they said, the thing is for like I was always setting alarms in the morning, but for night shift I never have to set an alarm because I'm always up. It's like I wake up and then maybe I do something, need a little bit. I got a little bit of time before work to do stuff, and then I do my thing, and then I go out and do my night shift activity, and then I wake up, or then like when everybody else is waking up to go to work, I go to sleep, and pretty much my sleeping hours, well, kind of me too, but the sleeping hours coincide with the work hours of like anybody that's working a 9 to 5. And then it's like if you're working like that later shift or the evening shift where it's like, all right, you still have the like the same evening hours. It's just the difference is that you're waking up to meet friends when they're out. So you gotta be well, you can't be out there drinking and partying hard in that sense. But if you're staying sober, you can be with them. And then, when your time comes, everybody else is going home. You're going over to your pick up your night shift and do your night activities. And that's something where it's like well, it's a different lifestyle, and it's like, for some people that's true, but what if you're what if you work that like what if you find that you wake up, you go right to work, and then you're like after work you're up for maybe like I'm assuming an 8-hour day here, so it's like let's say we have your day split into thirds of eights. It's like you wake up, you go directly to work, then you after work you like, all right, I've got 8 hours of downtime. Now I know that's not like a perfect split in the world, but then it's like, all right, now you're up at like, I'm not precisely sure what those hours are going to be, but you're getting wait a second. 9 to 5. 9 to 5, so whatever. So you're probably up in like, the wee hours of the morning. So it's like, all right, now you're interacting with a different set of people. If that's when you're picking your times. And that's something to just think about. I know that when you're in school or whatever, you've got school kind of dictating your personality. And I know there's just over the years, especially after school, it's like as time goes on, uh, things start getting more and more weird, but they're not getting weird in the sense that they're bad. They're just getting weird in the fact that they're so different to what used to be that the past seems to be no longer relevant to the future. I don't know. I seem to be losing track of my mind, so I'll I guess now now's about good time as any to say I'm gonna go skedaddle. All right, have a nice time enjoying what you're doing. If you listen this far, well, I guess I didn't really intend this to be a slogan word, but it seems like I say this at all the ends of the videos, but I'll say it here. Peace.